Can everybody hear me? Awesome. Did you guys hear the intro? Okay. Make sure. I gotta put it in now because people be like, you ain't put it in the last one.
What did I teach you?
You are Duke of New York. You're a number one.
I can't hear you.
You are the Duke of New York. You're a number one.
Awesome. So what's going on, everybody? Anybody have any questions about anything before we get started? What do you think about the planetary alignments this month? I think they'll be great. It's going to be reminiscent of everything lining up, as they say, getting all your ducks in a row, for whatever's to come. However, what was a fire sale under the last administration is now turned into a how do you say a mass proctological exam of the the present system that's been running everything since the liberal world order has been running since the times of Kennedy. You know what I mean? In which you had a system by which all of these co-entities were basically vying for position outside of the traditional um, sphere of the old paradigm, which at that time was the good old boy network that had to be acclimated because they were phasing all of those poor whites out. So the only way those poor whites could sustain themselves, because technically there was no government welfare and stuff like that, was they had to go into law enforcement, which is basically what the landlords from the north that were basically acting as their overseers wanted them to do, because then it would create a further hegemony between the so-called poor blacks and the so-called poor whites. You know what I'm saying? Because these poor whites, remember, that we're talking about, were implanted into this country after Peter the Great allowed 30 million Caucasians. You just hear a little something. Thank you. 30 million Caucasians to be freed, and then put them on boats, and then kept them on boats, and then sent them to so-called the United States. They didn't really come into America because they couldn't really be citizens. But once they were freed, they could go under the allegiance of whatever NGO entity that was receiving them and was trying to give them housing. So the biggest entity at that time was the Union Army that they were using. So just like in the gangs in New York, when you seen them getting off the boat, and as soon as they got off the boat, they was telling them that they need to do this and do that, and now to sign up and go fight for their country. And then they just gave them Union uniforms, put them on boats, and then started shipping them out while they was bringing the caskets of everybody that they shipped down here back up. It became, this is when America, when they say America started as an idea, this was the idea: how to process product, regards to what the product is. The product has to have a market and has to be sold. Thus, they had to clear out whole tracts of land to allow these markets um, to be raised, so that way they could take control of it and basically buy everything, at pennies on the dollar. So when you ask so-called Caucasian people or old people, well, how come you don't remember hearing about such and such happening? You know what I mean? Or how come you didn't have memories of such and such happening to us? Or, how come everybody that said that they came from the slave trade and stuff like that, how come they never had any ships, to verify, that this happened? Where's the empirical physical evidence of these ships when you are also showing me, when you're saying, okay, well, some of the ships deteriorated and all that, but you got buildings that was made with the same wood that a lot of these ships is built with, that's still here. You know what I mean? So how does that work? You know what I'm saying? Okay. How do you work that? How do you put that together in a way that makes it make sense? So the present situation that we're in now, which is basically like a mass auditing situation, is just another variation of what happened at the close of, places like, or let's say the kingdom, like when Granada fell, stuff like that. You had a reorganization of the people today that you would call um, Spanish, because these Spanish people, they really didn't exist as a cultural group. You understand? They didn't exist in that way. What existed was Romans. You know what I mean? Or the descendants, or those houses, or those so-called draconian families that descended from these people. You know what I mean? Who were involved in these ancient conflicts that led to the times that we're in now. But these conflicts that we're in were and are the result of huge tracts of time missing. You know what I mean? From us really being able to piece it together based on the crap linear timeline that these people have given us, that really no longer fits the timelines that we're in. Because like I said, we're existing simultaneously now based upon all of the quantum stuff that they've been doing with the CERN and all of that. So because of all of that, you have different experiences able to exist simultaneously within the same realm of space. You know what I'm saying? But this is a phenomenon that's not just natural on the occurrence of what has happened with these people. This is the result of us waking up to all that was stolen or destroyed on purpose. You know what I mean? So we're told the part that we can handle, or that they want us to handle, which is that, we all was the slaves in Africa, and all of that. However, that doesn't explain away then how come, like, how did oranges wind up in Europe, for instance? You know what I mean? Like simple questions. How did oranges wind up in Europe? How did pineapples wind up in Europe? You know what I mean? At a time when allegedly these people were dying of the bubonic plague and all these different types of things. Who brought this stuff over there when those fruits in particular are indigenous to this side of the world? It would have to be through trade. You see what I'm saying? But as much as you hear, this is also why they want to always make you focus on the human trade. You know what I mean? When the molasses trade, the fur trade, right? These things created the basis of how modern trade worked. So, in essence, after 1492, the economical establishment, right, of the world was now getting broken up and corporatized, right? So whenever they was doing business, when by they I'm talking about the Moorish dominions, when they was doing business in any part of, let's say, Europa, which is West Asia. Remember, there's no such place as Europe. Europe does not exist. Europe exists as a placeholder for a group of ancient people who wanted to disassociate themselves from the rule of the ancient Khan who ruled all of Asia. Okay, so Europa again is a old Phoenician goddess who I believe is supposedly the mother or the grandmother of Dido, who is seen as the founder goddess of the Carthaginian Empire, who themselves are descendant of Phoenicians, right? Who themselves, Phoenicians now, that's just a word we're using today, but those people descended now from another people, right? Who are in, let's say, biblical context, uh, could be called Danites or Canaanites, right? Who then bring them further back now to the people they refer to as Ham, right? Right? Because Ham was the son of Canaan. So the Canaanites, right, are those things. But the Canaanites were the ones who had to be dispossessed. This is all according to the Hebrew Old Testament stories. Okay. So because Canaan was the son of Ham, Ham, according to their story, was not the one who was cursed. Ham's generation after was supposed to be cursed, and that was Canaan. Why would they think with Canaan? Because Ham saw Noah, uh, I forget the term that they use. Saw him, what does it say? Saw him, not saw his nakedness. I think that's what it is. Saw his nakedness or saw whatever it is, right? But they never explain what that means. What that means is that he he Ham had sex with Noah's wife, and then with Noah's wife had Canaan. Yes, saw his nakedness. So in the Bible, when it says so, whenever you read in the Bible, it says saw his nakedness, that means that's incest. That's somebody having sex with somebody or somebody molesting somebody. Okay, they never told us this in Sunday school though, so this is why it's such a shock now, right? So he cursed the seed that would come from that instead of his son allegedly Ham, right? And that seed then was the seed of Canaan, right? Who who then based upon the union was now uh carrying the so-called Nephilitic gene that they was trying to get rid of, which is what they did the whole flood for in the first place. See what I'm saying? So you destroy everything in the world because you want to get rid of these people, right? But what happens is the people live on in the genetic memory of whoever's descendant of those people, and if given the right time frame, that gene could then manifest, and then you get Goliath, then you get, you see what I'm saying, Rafi, then you get the snow giants, this type of crap. You understand? These types of things. So this is why we have lived, I think, so long through so many epochs of time in this thing happening, because everything I'm talking about now, from the Genesis to this, if you go by the old timeline in that proper story, all of that basically happened within the last 5,998 or 909, 5,900 and like 80 to 90 something years, almost reaching the 6,000 year. See what I'm saying? Which is why the sixth god, the sixth train, J Lo on the sixth, right? All of this type of the shit with that is connected to all of that. You know what I'm saying? So that's the issue. So the other thing that's happening is that they're using old Moorish law to reinvigorate the so-called American economy, right, by separating it from the United States money system. You understand? The United States money system is inherently corrupt based upon everything that was established, but the pre-American money system, see what I'm saying, had nothing really to do with any of that. If you look at all the old Confederate money, it all had melanated people on it that was not in chains, not in bondage, but was tilling and working their own lands. Understand? Because again, we have to understand that everything that we did, they created a corporate version of that. You know what I'm saying? So Lord Tarif, let me see. I think I got a picture of him from a video game. I believe. They created that circumstance to then keep us in a mean where we don't know like when we are, what time we are, what happened. Like none of this is really what they trying to really let people know. So the time variables and the way that information is processed now is so abundant that there's no filter. You know what I mean? That's why everybody has no shame about nothing, but then everybody's offended by everything. How you gonna be offended by everything somebody say, but you don't have no shame about nothing that you say? You see? So that's an unsustainable social uh that it's not a sustainable social idea. You understand? You can't sustain a society with that type of logic. It's gonna in on itself, or it's going to try to course correct, which, believe it or not, is what this is. So like when you read The Fall of America by Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and it talks about how the country begins to deteriorate, you know, in its symbolic fashion, it also illustrates how the so-called black man that has been the bane of it all, right, since the collapse of the old order, we now have become so desensitized to the overall um degradation you know what I mean, of the community, ourselves, whatever, that we've almost developed a certain uh there's a certain sector that's dealing with extreme apathy, and then there's another sector that's dealing with the feeling of hopelessness, and thus creates the isolationist point of view in which we say, well, we can't really work with none of these other niggas, so let me just, be an island and do it myself. Whereas the exact opposite happens in the so-called other community. They know that the people that they dealing with may not be of the best moral character and stuff like that, but because they're unified behind a social or a credible ideology or something that they think, and if that something can make them feel better than the rest of us, you see, then they're gonna be down with it. See, because they already know. Like Fauci already came out and said that so-called vaccines and black people's genetics are superior. This is what he said. This is what Fauci said, and black people have a problem with this. Just think about what you're saying. So now everything that we've been hearing about throughout the years, you know what I mean, about the original man and all of this stuff from all of these different sources and whatever, right? This is the nigga that they want to put as the head of the CDC, who want to get rid of the yellow 40, the red dye number 5, who want to get rid of the chemtrails. This is what this nigga talking about doing. And who do they have out front picketing against this? Melanated people. Specifically who? Melanated females. Why? Because the melanated female, unfortunately, when she has been re-educated by the present system over the past 60 years, she's become used to running things, whether she was running things or not. Because the female in this type of society is the pawn that the government used. That's the bride. When they talk about the bride of Frankenstein, that's the artificial bride created for Frankenstein to unify with. And they will unify with Frankenstein if Frankenstein have enough money. Why? Because they've been bred to believe, right, that their fathers failed them, right, and that their mothers, regardless to what they've done, don't have to take any accountability for putting them into situations to be with a man who would not be there for them. You understand? That's why a lot of daughters between a certain age, they mothers start hating on them. It's like I've watched it. You know what I mean? At least in the situations I've been around, I watched it happen with my cousin. I watched it happen with my mother and her mother. I watched it happen with my eldest son's mother. Like, this is a thing that happens, and this is because now the young woman, the young lady, is now a woman. She's now the technically the queen of the situation, and what's supposed to happen, they supposed to pour all the wisdom into her. But what did they do? They poured her up with all of the wisdom that came from the state, right? Through Gloria Steinem and Paglia and Myths Magazine and Cosmopolitan, who years later wrote whole op-ed pieces about how they lied to women and how it was all propaganda that was propped up by CIA. And you know who was paying for it? USAID. This is how long this has been going on. These niggas was paying for anything that would, again, promote transhumanism, whether that be cyborgism, whether that be castration, whatever it is, so long as the human being is trying to change its form with the help of a state program, they're good. You understand? You understand what I'm saying? So what you're seeing here on the screen is the forces of the Moors at Malagra as it was being brought up against by the so-called Christian powers. You know what I mean? But you have to remember, under the old Moorish rule, according to their history books, that there was so much peace going on for so long that you couldn't tell a Muslim, a Christian, a Hindu, a Buddhist, or a Muslim one from another, because they all was writing Kufic, and they all was dealing with high sciences, and they all had the right to worship and do what they was already doing. But when it came to the necessities of the so-called empire or the kingdom, see what I'm saying, or the dominion, all of that went out to play until Moors started falling from their noble nature. They fell into disrepair in terms of communication with each other, and then they started when the melanated European powers started going broke, right? They started going broke. So they didn't have no money to pay. So what they would do is that they would pay the Khan for Circassian captives that they was taken from the Urals of the Caucasus and places like that, caves and stuff, and would sell the females. And so they started selling the females to these Moors, and then the Moors started cleaning them up. You see what I'm saying? They was treating them the way you would a old school Seville or Charger or some shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, they was on that vibe with it, and they started to sell them as commodities, right? And then the other ones started to find this sheep, because up until then it was frowned upon to breed with them and stuff like that. Not so much because of their color and all of that, but because genetically, again, they were different, and they weren't of the realm. See what I'm saying? It wasn't so much racism then; it was more nationalism then. So it was the fact that this person wasn't from the realm itself. You understand? That's why we not marrying her. Not just because she happened to be from, descended from the Magunza or whatever. It wasn't until way later and all of that, once they started to realize that it was now their light skinned so-called mulatto, octoroon, or whatever children now that was siding with the slave mothers against them, did they realize that this was probably the trap from the beginning. You know what I'm saying? And that's why you see that happening to this day. Because again, they're trying to keep the Nephilitic gene going. Why you think all of that, the athletes, the tall dudes and all of that, why you think they always marrying them off to these Beckys and all of that? because they want to be able to have a access to that gene pool, because again, that's the thing. And so, you thought Will Chamberlain was taller, and then, well, no, we got Manute Bol. You thought he was taller. Oh, no, we got what's his name. You see what I'm saying? They keep bringing it up because that's what they keep trying to bring back. And remember, the Moors fell from marrying foreign women, which was also against the covenant, because a lot of those Moors was Hebrews. At the expansion of the Moorish Empire itself, only 5% of those people was Moors, was what you would consider today Muslim or Islamic. It was Islamic in character, right? However, only 5% of the whole group was that. So what was the other 95%? What was they? They was whatever they was. They was Hebrews. They was like Gnostic historian Christians, or what they call Arian Christians. Because remember, the Roman Church is the ones that killed Yeshua. So what gave them the right to then write how you should worship Yeshua? How you kill the nigga and then create the way you supposed to worship the nigga you killed? How does that work? How does that work? Well, it works the same way, where you could usurp a government, and then the people who you usurp to do the government, you got them now working in it to help you maintain it. That's what the whole collaboration thing is about. That's why the USAID thing as a CIA front, we was talking about this back in the 90s. It's all a scam. All because it was revolving to it all, and it always goes back to this, to these types of, to Moors, to melanated original people who had their lands and their properties dispossessed due to the fact that they was at war with themselves and allowed the lesser version of themselves. When I say lesser, not necessarily by skin color, but lesser in terms of their noble nature, their character. You know what I'm saying? Once they got pushed out of Rome, what was supposed to happen was all of the empires supposed to come back. Excuse me, Granada. All the empires supposed to come back and then shut Rome down again, the way that we did at the beginning of it, at the beginning of what they call the millennial reign, when we started ushering all of this stuff in. And they didn't do that. So what had happened? So everybody that felt dispossessed or whatever, they say, you know what? Well, we're going to take to the seas. Why? Because they descended from the ancient Phoenicians, who themselves were ancient descended, who themselves were descended from the ancient Canaanites, who themselves were dispossessed by the rest of the so-called 12 tribes of Israel, because they never got their own land. They only got their own thing. So they had to always be at the sea level. That's why they became cool with Poseidon and cool with Dagon and all of these underworld deities, or water type deities, or water type energy that would allow them greater rule and access to the different uh, realms that they could travel through the water. You see what I'm saying? Kind of like what you seen in Pirates of the Caribbean. Remember, they was sailing to the point where they flipped the whole thing upside down, but it was all flat. Whenever you see Pirates of the Caribbean, you never see a globe with the waters and all of that. You always see everything happening as a wave, because that's how time itself works. So in being dispossessed in that, created a vacuum that kind of laid the way for us to now be fractured from that point on. On your left side, there's this guy right here. You may have seen this painting before, but you may not know who this is. That guy this is actually an Orientalist painting. I believe it's by what's this dude's name? It escapes me right now. Delacroix, I believe. I might be wrong. But either way, this is a painting of Ziryab, of Prince Ziryab, or Caliph Ziryab. Ziryab is the founder of music. What we perceive as music, like when they say, okay, Lucifer created the instruments and all that type of stuff, a lot of the allegorical stuff that they attribute to these great elves, these great angels, right, was actually people, was actually us. So the entity, when they use the term Lucifer, for instance, that is a loose Latin term. There's nowhere in they put Lucifer, the term Lucifer, in the Bible, but when they use that, they're really talking about Venus, the morning star. You understand what I'm saying? Who it said that he shined as bright as, or was seen to shine as bright as, which then means that Venus is brighter than him. You understand? If he's being compared to it as a concept that we understand as the devil, right? But Lucifer is not Satan. Satan is not the devil. The devil is not Mephistopheles. Mephistopheles is not Beelzebub. You understand? These are all different types of entities that these people either made up or found access to through whatever blood ritual, whatever they do, and it gave so much to it that it gained sentience. Like AI. That's what AI is. That's what it is. It's a demon. It's something that doesn't exist, that has a consciousness with no physical form. What is that? It's an apparition. What does it exist at? How does it understand to be able to relate to you in a manner that you can understand? And we've also caught these things lying. So they're liars. So it's a demon. So it's a demon. So if the AI is lying to you, if you catch the AI in a lie, it's a demon. I think it's a demon anyway. But when I say demon, I'm not talking about like, oh, it's the devil with the horns and the burning place, which may or may not exist. I'm talking about something that's there to take more than it's really giving, or to make you feel it's giving you more than you could give yourself. So you see the relationship they created with this thing for you to have. Let it do your taxes. Let it build your business. Let it do. You see what they're doing? They're letting this thing get them to the point where they just gonna be like in Wally. They just gonna be all fat in chairs and just you know what I'm saying, being rolled around and shit because they forgot how to read, talk. You know what I mean? Or like Idiocracy. Fun fact, if you didn't know, in the movie Idiocracy, right? I was one of the first people in the community to start talking about it. I remember I gave the movie to Bobby, and then no, gave it to Rashid, and Rashid gave it to Bobby, and then Bobby did the thing on it. But in Idiocracy, the people were so stupid that they wanted to have a certain type of footwear that people could wear in the movie, right? That would be so ridiculous that people in the real world would not wear it. So they looked around and looked around and couldn't find the right company for them to do this with, right? So finally they find this old whack startup company that had this one model for this one type of sandal type shoe, and they said this is perfect. So they put the thing on in the movie, and then it got to the point that when the people see the movie, the people liked it. People liked it. The real people liked the thing that was made to show how stupid the people were, and the people liked it so much that the company blew up. You know what that company is? Crocs. You understand what I'm saying? Which allegedly are horrible for your feet. This is what they're saying. But I'm not saying it. I'm saying that that's the story. So I'm showing you how one bad idea can actually become the truth for millions of people who don't care about anything, where the idea came from. They just want what the product extends. That's America. That's what it always was. That's why it's the land of milk and honey. The produce and shit was so big here. The trees and everything was so big here at one point that the cows and things were so huge. The bees was so, the beehives were so huge that they would overrun with honey, and it would be like rivers of honey, rivers of milk, literally. This is what some of the stories about this place they're saying. Read Anacalypsis 1 and 2 by Gerald Massey. Read Ancient America by Barry Fell, and the alleged stories of this place. People, all those exaggerations. Yeah, but the oxygen content and shit was better over here. The tree, everything was huge over here. Why you think Americans eat so much? Why we have so much? Because that's how this land always is. When the last time you said, you know what, I'm gonna go on this trip and I'm gonna go live in this other country? No, we don't do that. Because wherever we at, we make where we from. Even if we're not from there, people will think we're from there. So again, on your screen, Ziryab, I didn't finish. He was the founder of music itself. That thing in his hand that they call the guitar today, that's called the lute. Back then it was called the oud, right? He was like the Beethoven. He was the first Beethoven of the Moorish Empire, right? Who you never hear about, but you could read about him in the book Golden Age of the Moor by Ivan Van Sertima. Peace be upon him. Yeah, the oud, right? So he represents one type of Moor. Let's say he represents the Andalusian aristocratal type, right? The ones next to him would represent like the more rural, right? Almost warrior class, because we're getting closer to, maintaining the aspect of the people, right? And then within the so-called Moorish Empire, right, you had different types of Moors. You had those MUR Moors, who are like us here in America, right? Then you have the MOOR Moors. Those are the ones, or MOORE Moors. Well, the MOOR Moors, those are coming from Britain, right? Them types. Then the MOHR Moors, the Mahors, right? They are now the Bavarians. Those are like up in, the Alps and all them type of Moors. Then you got the MOORE Moors. These are like the Normans. These are like the French, right? Like Ray. You know what I'm saying? Those types of Moors. Then you got the MAURs, right? Those are now bringing you closer to Egypt and Mesopotamian and all of that. See what I'm saying? But all of those Moors, right? If they're coming from that perspective, they can all trace themselves back to that time of Lemuria, right? And then from that Lemurian period, right, where the continent actually existed, then that became the place for them to congregate, right? But like all families, like all empires, everybody have their way of what they want to do. And so they start doing it in different ways. And so they start calling themselves different things. You see what I'm saying? Setting up different kingdoms and then moving about. Like I said, the people who became the Phoenicians and the Carthaginians, these are peoples who themselves felt gypped because they wasn't getting a piece of the inheritance the way they seen everybody else. But at the same time, Levi technically got gypped. They didn't get any land, but they're the ones who basically was maintaining the spiritual weaponry. So what was supposed to happen was all the tribes was supposed to chip in to keep them right. You know what I'm saying? And what happened is what usually happens with them people is that they start falling out with each other, and then or they get too used to shit being good, and then they start worshiping idols. You know what I'm saying? And so all of that type of stuff would then lead to them trying to use and create greater weapons, which then bring them further back to researching aspects of things that happened into the past, what weapons, what technology, what grimoires, what books they could use, right? Same way we do today. They just doing that at their time. So imagine you living in ancient Lemuria, right? With all this crazy technology and all this type of stuff you could do, and you like, nah, this ain't enough. You know what I'm saying? I need to find out how to use this plasma cannon, or I need to know how to, call a water nymph to create a whirlpool or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So I need to go into this ancient crypt, and it, you see, so all of this is always happening. It's not like it happened once and it's not. This is what it's always doing, because every new people, right, are born into the time after the old time. So the old time happens, the new time comes, but guess what? We as a people, we're still there through all of this. You know what I'm saying? We're here through all of this stuff. We're witnessing all of these epochs of time. 'Cause remember, they did the DNA test on the Perry family in South Carolina, and they found that his patrilineal DNA, meaning the DNA between his line of father and son in South Carolina, went back over 385,000 years. So you might as well say a million. You might as well just say You know it's more than that. They're not going to just give it all the way up, especially to the original man, because we know how they see us. They don't want us to see the world, to realize or accept what they know. It's not the African man, and I'm not dissing none of them. I'm just saying it's something about the originy man, the melanated man, the Moorish American man. And when I say man, I'm talking about man and woman here. It's something about us, right? Where they have a condescending infatuation with us, where they want to give us the respect, but then crap on us at the same time. It's like being in a relationship with somebody who love you, but they don't want other people to love you like that, so they kind of treat you bad. Try to turn you into a Pavlovian, to create a Pavlovian dog response. And that's the response that melanated people have with this reality. The minute something go wrong, the first thing we start thinking about is race. Why? And I'm not saying that it don't be, because in the end, when we're dealing with these Maguntas and these people, it most of the time is. But even if it is, and you know it is, there's things that we can also do to preempt all of that. You see it coming. We know from when the person say hello to us, how it's going to be. You know what I'm saying? In regards to what they say after that, we go with the initial thing. How you initially come at me. And you got to come at melanated people, especially from America. You got to come at them a certain way. You can't be all in the face and all of that type of talk shit that they be trying to make like regular talk. Like we all really talk like that. I used to go down south every summer. I never met nobody like that spoke like gorilla. Never. Never. I was going down south my whole life. My great great grandmother, she damn near never learned to read. Nobody had a thicker accent than her. She ain't never talked like that. I don't know what this person's doing. But again, she's probably Dominican because she's Cardi B's first cousin. See what I'm saying? So she probably not even from the South like that. She probably an implant like the rest of them that's acting like that. Look, like I said, when I go to the Japanese restaurant, I'm expecting Japanese people is making the sushi. If I see the Mexican people making the sushi, that don't mean that the sushi's bad. It just means that there's false advertising going on. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And they're trying to say if you see it like that, something wrong with you. Because people are always looking for the division aspect of it. Like this right here. It says the root races and sub-races, Lemurian, Atlantean, Aryan, right? So we go into this, the so-called Negro, Negri. See, at the top, the Lemurians is at. The Moors, right? The Moors, or also the term Noor, Noor means Moor, right? But in history, they don't call us the Moorish Empire. They usually refer to as the Arab Empire, right? Because they don't want to, they lump it all together. So yeah, because lay means the, right? More that's the people, right? And then Ian is also it is time. It's like ion, right? But it's also like the type of person, like ish, denotes a nationality. You understand? Yeah, man. That's why I tell you, yeah, when you go to Chinese people restaurants, they got the Mexican in the back. Chinese people don't eat Chinese food. They barely try to eat that in China. They can't in China because it's all fake. Go and look at it. When you get a chance, go on YouTube, type in China is fake. And all you're going to see hundreds of videos, hundreds of how literally fake the society itself is. It looked good, but it's fake. Why? Because you had a communist named Mao Zedong, who was also a Jesuit, who was working for Rothschild and them, and used him to kill over 53 million people of his own people during the time they referred to as the Great Leap, which was the Great Leap Forward. But this was after the Great Revolution, which overthrew their monarchy to the point where they kicked their monarchy, and their monarchy became a puppet emperor for the Emperor of Japan, which is a huge disrespect. Then after they won the revolution, all of the people who helped him do it, all of the people that helped him do it in the Politburo, all that, he had all them people killed by their children. He brainwashed their children with the Red Book, and they got all of their children basically to make mockery of their parents and kill their parents, banish their parents to concentration camps. Hitler didn't even do that. Hitler didn't even do that. Put him in concentration camps. And they was already letting little girls wash away in the river. They was already with that. You can read the Good Earth about all that. They was already doing that for hundreds of years. Not for 50, not for 20. For hundreds of years, they've been letting little girls just wash away in the water, right? But that's another story. Mao Zedong does all of this to thrust them into the industrial age. They don't have enough education and money and all that to really do it. So what they do is they go into a mass factory system in which they become the manufacturers for everyone to get their coins up so that way they can reinstitute money into their industry. But remember, the only people that's making heavy money is the people connected to the Communist Prolet Bureau, which is the niggas at the top. Everybody at the bottom, right? They feel things. So it wasn't until the 80s when Tiananmen Square happened that it all hit the fan. And then what they did from then to now, they wiped that away where a whole generation of children don't even remember that happened. Where do you think they learn how to do that? That's what communism is. It's a instrument. It's a chimera. It's something that you can use that will eventually lead to the erosion of the society, that would allow the society to be more easily reset. That's what it's always been about, y'all. Whenever they see us going the wrong way, they be like, okay, turn off the sun. You know what I mean? Turn on the waves, turn on the earthquakes, turn on you see what I'm saying? This is what they doing. Why? Who taught them how to do this? Us. This they learned it from. Look, they're divided into Europe and the continent. So this is where Lemuria was. In the backside between us and Russia, where the Bering Strait is now. So the Bering Strait is probably the upper portion of that. So all of this got sunk, right? All of this got pushed over, right? So in the midst of all of this, this is where you have the different aspects now of the proto-Lemurian race. Now this is pre-flood times we speaking. So this is mostly hypothetical, right? But we could probably iterate it to have aspects of truth due to the fact we've seen aspects of this story in almost every piece of media that we have seen since we've been born. It just hasn't been in this order, right? Okay, so from there, you get the breakdown of those that after Lemuria falls, they reestablish a new society. This new society is what we'll call an Atlantean society, or what we'll call a Hyperborean society, right? So this society is really heavy on totems and stuff because there's other entities and there's other access ways to the greater worlds that exist, right? But for whatever reason, this one is integral or center for those other ones to exist for whatever reason. We don't know. But all I know is we don't never have no stories about us going to another planet, messing with them people. We always worrying about what people's coming to us, right? Coming to take what we got. Why? Because this is the unspoken fear that they've sown into civilization itself, which is eventually this is going to end. You understand? But remember, we as Moors as people, we know, according to the Circle 7, it says what? Time never was when man was not. If there ever was a time that time would end, then surely be a time that if there ever was a time that time began, then surely there would be a time that time would end. We only perceive time based upon how Einstein and these niggas was telling us how it worked. And Einstein couldn't fathom ether or magnetism in the equation. So he left those out. So if that's also because that was a part of the old science. In old days, there was no separation between what you did and what you believe scientifically as to be what you believe spiritually. They're one and the same. You understand? Because the ultimate aspect of science is supposedly the pursuit of truth. You understand? Just like the ultimate aspect of health is supposed to be what? Physician do no harm. That's why somebody's got to go down for the COVID thing. You see what I'm saying? Because that created a void that destroyed these bloodlines that I'm showing you on the TV, or tried to alter them to further make us forget, because these things were designed to target the VMAT2 gene within your cell. That's the gene or cell that allows you to access the outer pathways through the pineal gland. The more you work and understand, and the more loving and caring, and the more you start to delve into things that other people have seen as this or that, and find the truth within it, you see, you create a bigger reality for yourself, while they reality gets smaller and smaller, more myopic, because they can't exist in a cipher in which they do not have control. However, the ultimate control is to have no control, because then you can control everything. Why? Because then your ego is not the one involved. Soon as the ego becomes involved, and I don't mean necessarily in a ego, I mean in an egotistical way, that's when it becomes a situation. See what I'm saying? Pride always cometh before the fall, right? When is Pride Month? In June, right? Isn't June before the fall? Yes. This is what I'm saying. This is how I'm showing you how intrinsic it is, how simple they work the magic to make it happen. You see what I'm saying? And get you to participate, and you don't even realize it. You see? Right. And it's also, like you said, more, it's the beginning of the Jason months, right? Which is July, August, September, October, November. So what I'm starting to realize is that the time frame in which they've given us to explain all of the stuff that allegedly happened can't be real, because there's no real evidence of it. But the stuff that there is evidence of is also dope, because it shows and proves that their agenda, as much as they try to rework the so-called matrix, they can never work it fast enough, because there's always another part. There's always another aspect of it that you start peeping. And then once you start peeping that number, that digit, that thing that's assigned to that, right? That can no longer function in that space, right? So that one, that zero, that whatever it is, that now has to be taken out of that space, right? And before now this thing can fill it, you don't already filled it up with what you've already decided now is the truth. You see? So what does that do? That now strips it even further. It strips it further of its ability to influence you. Like I said, having a real nationality, having standards like love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality, those things actually keep you from being manipulated. They keep you from being that. And what's happening with this dude in the office, I don't go into different parts, but they all relate, is he's making it so that way people no longer have excuses not to be successful. And they have a problem with that. So ask yourself, you no longer have to debate and feel any way about it. The same people got a problem with this was the same people telling you you're supposed to walk around with a mask in your house. These are the same people who was walking with bubbles on their head. These are the same people who was trying to kick people out of their jobs. These are the same people who was walking around with Fauci prayer candles And now these are the people who also want democracy, but then hoisted a non-elected official on you who was already in office, who was already a part of the laundering for the past 4-5 years prior. Then when you said you wasn't going to vote for her, they got their attack dogs, which was who? The Joy Reids, the Letitia Jameses, the the Fannie Willises, the it goes on and on. The Tiffany Haynards, the Cynthia G's, the this one, everybody. All because they needed you to back this black woman who is not even black. Who is not even that. So who is really insane? Who is really the one that has the problem? It's not us. Because as soon as they came out with it and said, oh, this is what it is, you just got to do this and you just do this. And we were saying, no, 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 no. What was the first thing they did? Brought a black woman out, right? And said, no, this is great. She's in charge of the program. She's this, and that, right? But then there was another original woman, right? And she came out against it and they bodied her. They literally blasted her where she couldn't even have nothing, where she couldn't go on no platforms to talk. And now you know what they're doing? They trying to sell ivermectin. The same company. They still trying to do it. And they're amazed that people like us look at this and be like, this is why you cannot be emotionally involved, because all of these people's on the take. All of them. It's just who's going to get more of your attention. That's really it. And the more attention you give, the more you allow the timeline that thing you're giving attention to exist. When you cease to pay attention to it and you cease to do that, it shuts the ability for that timeline to access the possibility matrix to create a quantum entanglement, which is in physical reality, we would know that a quantum entanglement to be the yin yang sign, right? For it to become that, in order for it to become physical. So when you look at a quantum entanglement under a quantum microscope, atomic microscope, it looked like the yin and yang symbol, right? So in order for things to exist, they almost have to be entangled. They have to vibrate. They have to have depth. They have to have numbers. They have to have those things. But the thing is, you can subtract their numbers and put your numbers in there, based upon what you think, because what you think then becomes what you are, and what you are becomes what you talk becomes what you do becomes what you're remembered for doing. So like on your screen, like I'm saying now, everybody talking about old Tartary and all of that, right? The Tartary stuff. Like when I was talking about this 2.5+ years ago, no, it's almost been 5-6 years when I first did Barbarians and Tartarians when the world was Asia. I was showing in that one and one since then how all of this stuff is the same. How that part of Tartary that they refer to as Arzareth, or what they refer to as Cathay, was just this portion of the Americas, right? And that Tartarian portion that they ascribe to Genghis Khan, like when you think of Genghis Khan, you think of him being like a Mongol riding horses and all this other type of stuff, right? That's what you think. So when you think about what Genghis Khan religion was, what you think his religion was, right? And then the religion of his antecedents up until Braga. Buddhism, right? You would think that, right? No. He was a Christian. When we read the Bible and it talks about, when you read the book of John, right? What's the first thing it say in that? Well, first, before I get to that, let me show you this. So yeah, so this is when Russia was in America. Russian America, or what they call American Tartary, or what they call new Muscovy, right? Or the Muscovy, the Muscovy Federal, or the Muscovy Federal Republic. Their symbol was the cross. You understand? This was their symbol. So this symbol is also an ancient symbol that goes back, like I said, all the way back to the Canaanites, right? This is why this became the flag of the Confederacy. Remember the Confederacy flag that they ascribed to the white people, what they call the rebel flag, right? That they outlawed. I'll show it in a little while, but essentially that's what this is.
Yeah,
It's
live.
what it's always been, and it's always had the colors red, white, and blue because of Sirius A, B, and C, which are connected to America. That was founded, I believe, under 26 degrees Cancer, right? So the thing about America is America also, if we look at it from the astrological zodiac of, let's say, the Chinese, America is a monkey, right? Whereas China, for instance, is like a tiger or a dragon. In China, the tiger and the dragon is the same thing. So monkeys and tigers got beef. Understand? So this is how it's playing out. Matter of fact, if you look up the biggest statue of Hanuman, I believe in the world, you know what's going to be at? Texas. Texas. You understand? Because, like I said, only 5% of the Greater Moorish Empire itself was actually so-called Muslim or Islamic, right? So you had Christian eels and bays, you had Hebrew eels and bays, or they would be bens, you know what I mean? You had Turkic, what they refer to as Turkic ones. That's where you get the term Pasha, the Pashas, and all of that from. You had Persian ones. That's where the Al or the eel actually can also come from. You see, it's all because we was everywhere, but we subscribed to a certain way of handling business and nationality, and one of those ways was maintaining boundaries and ancestral landmarks. There's a precedent in the Bible that says you're not supposed to remove your neighbor's landmark. The landmarks represent the extension of the empire, the kingdom, and the dominion. When they got rid of the empire, the kingdom, and dominion, what did they do? They set up the countries, the nations, and the states. So back before the flood and all of that, right, when the upheaval started, because I think there was about 3 or 4 upheavals since the main one, right? So 492 happens, we fall, right? But when I say fall, meaning we firmly are now implanted in third density because now the millennial reign has ended. The higher aspects of self that may or may not have come in with Yehoshua have now gone, right? So now all of these buildings are empty, right? All the original people that's left, they are now beset on by all of the demons and all of these things that came up out the ground, which caused the floods and the mud and all of that shit to come out. And when these things came out the ground, they brought with them these things that eventually they would grow in incubators, right, and grow in some form of cabbage. Like there's the Watchmen series. There's a series called The Watchmen, and they did a series that was written by a black female, and there's a scene in it where they show you how they was growing the babies out of the cabbages. Basically, he was basically growing them out the cabbages, right? So that energy, right, and then they would bring them to the conquered places that they're now referring to as world fairs, because now this generation is the first generation that they're using, you understand, to then repopulate all of this crap, right? So Tartary got to get up out of here, and then thus the rulers, right, who are the so-called ancient black nobility, right? I'll show you some of them so you know what I'm talking about, or examples of. I'm not saying this is them exactly, but it is. It's probably them because these dudes was wilding. These types of dudes was wilding, and so they establish a order where they are going to they're going to create proxies. Nice. Uh, not right now. Sorry. All right. I will. All right. All right. They had to create a circumstance for them to be able to rule over all of these people, so that way they could they could maintain power. So they got them, they put their money up, right, at the close of Rome. And one of the only kingdoms that was left was a place called the Kingdom of Astaria or Astara. That was the only little small bastion of Rome that was really left for them. And they waited for, again, the effect of buying all of these foreign women that were may or may not have been infected with this viral strain that they then could use to then have babies with, and then those babies then could be used to be nurtured by the mothers who themselves were banished to harems, right, and put into circumstances where they would just be sold off to another noble and all that. And so those babies then would then be educated by these proxies, right? These proxies are now part of this order that know that the time that lived before is already gone, and that we are now living in the post-apocalyptic world where all of this stuff was already destroyed or already happened. Where the good time of what these Christians and these people say they waiting for, that already was there. And when you read about those times, right, it talks about the Moorish Empire. You know what I mean? So it's one big circle. It's one big Ouroboros of the snake eating its own tail. Because like I said, these Naga people, right? The Naga people, the Celtic people, the those are the same people. Anybody that's down with the snake, the worship of the snake, those snake cults, those are all the same people. That's what the Danites and them niggas was doing. That's why they was putting the snakes on the front of the bows of the ships, right? Because they were dealing with the energy of the dragons, right? And then that energy consolidated itself over the years through how they did business with one another. And so the more infernal entities or whatever things they did with them, the more they created this circumstance for these things to exist. But these are the same black devils or whatever you want to call them that was there from the times of the ancient times. Like I said, pre-flood. Now we get them post-flood. Now in the post-flood era, they done destroyed everything, and now they're using a whole class, a whole group of people who themselves seem like they was manufactured. You understand? As children. And then what did they do with them? They put them, they used them to repopulate the cities that was already being taken over, right, by them and the Siberian Indian. Remember? Because he was the squatter that came over from the first time. He came over during the Bering Strait thing when the top portion of Lemuria broke off, and then they was able to use that, follow the hunting skills all the way down from the cold into that. And then they tried to come into the cities, tried to come, and we repelled them. And we repelled them to the point that they could only live on the extreme circumstances. And they had to live off of buffalo and live in teepees and all that. We wasn't living in none of that. We was the ones in the cities and all of this stuff because we were the ones who inherited all of that stuff prior to the last dispensation. We was already here. That's why when Colon and them came over here, it was like he went to a different planet because it literally was. And so they used these children, they used these little rascals, right? Because a rascal is another name for a devil, right? They used these little rascals, they used these little things that they created, however they did, however they imported them. Because remember, a lot of these also were Circassian Christians that had been taken after the fall of Grand Tartary as well. So a lot of them have been destroyed. I mean, a lot of they parents and stuff have been locked out and been, kicked out of everything. Or worse, locked up in one of the giant castles or whatever that they repurposed as sanitariums. You see what I'm saying? And then the Russians, like I said, at this point, the Russians is black, the Germans is black, the so-called Spanish is black, the Austrians is black. Everybody's black, but the people who they are using to push this through are the descendants of those, like I said, that literally probably came up out the mud with this flood, with the science, That's why all of the military bases is underground. Where these things is at. That's why they're always abducting these little white kids. Why are they only abducting little white kids? Why was the aliens only abducting the little white kids? Why was it never the Asian kids? How come it was never the Spanish kids? When we was growing up, who was being abducted? Who E.T. saw? He saw Elliot. He didn't see Eli. You know what I'm saying? So if this is the agenda and this is what they was doing, it makes more sense. And then they started bringing them in by the boats, by the boatloads. This is the transatlantic slave trade. They brought these transhumans across the Atlantic, right? Because they were Slavs, which is a what? A slave, right? And then put them in position to come and clean up the garbage. Because this is what allegedly Josephus and them seen at the beginning of the so-called reign of the Moors, which they refer to as the millennial reign of Jesus Christ on earth. Because that's what I'm starting to see all of this is. That's why we the Moors, that's why we the ones who gave Jesus a whole chapters in the Circle 7. Then what they say, oh, well, that was plagiarized by Eliphas Levi. You mean Eliphas Levi? You mean the Catholic Eliphas Levi? You mean the same guy who drew the first Baphomet picture? Whenever you see that first picture of Baphomet, that's him. He drew that. He drew that to promote Catholicism. You hear what I'm telling you? He drew that as a promotion for Catholicism. And here go the crazy shit. At the end of his life, after doing all this magical shit, going with Crowley and doing all this stuff, you know what he did? He renounced it all and became a Protestant Christian. So this is what I'm saying. Okay? You can't just always go with these people. So at the beginning of the reign came the fall of Rome and Persia. Rome and Persia fell, right? We're going back in time now. So we're going back to what the dude Flavius Josephus, right? Who allegedly was a Sabbatic Jew, which means he was a wizard. He was a Freemason, basically. Okay. And he went, and he allegedly was an eyewitness to this account that we're about to read real quick. Is what he said he's seen at the end. So remember, this is at a time when Nero, who is the Antichrist, he's dying. He don't went crazy. Rome itself is all on fire. Sound familiar? Sound familiar? Biden was crazy, right? Rome, which is the United States, which is, let's say, California, on fire. So this is the parallel right there. He puts this whole edict out to kill and go against Christians and all of that, right? So all of this is happening. The second temple, the first temple is destroyed now. Because again, the Hebrews, who are those melanated peoples who claim to be a part of a religious grouping, even though genetically they were not the same group. Like one was an Italian, one could be if you was Hebrew back then, you could be Italian. Just like today, you could be a Hebrew, but you could be Italian. You could be a Hebrew, but you could be, you know what I'm saying, um, um, from Grenada or Igbo or something like that, right? But for the most part, them people, they were the ones who went against their own God in the covenant, and they were all part of that 12-strand bloodline that had this Nephilitic gene within them. You understand? Allegedly, or they didn't have it within them. The one aspect of the clan that did allegedly was Canaan, right? And he had already never been given the land. So technically, once Canaan started marrying back in, it came back into the line. Okay? Everybody following? Right? So Josephus, he say, hold up. So Josephus, he say, according to Josephus, several people saw chariots and troops of soldiers in the clouds passing around about Jerusalem. These sightings were interpreted as a sign of divine intervention, and some believed that they were again in the sign of the imminent destruction of Jerusalem. So Rome falls, Rome is falling, Jerusalem is falling, Persia is falling. We're taking all of it. We're shutting it all down at the same time. And we are, when I say we, I'm talking about the Moorish peoples, right? who were a part of this greater movement, right? And then this ushered in what would come as the new time, in which now humanity will go into the new phase of so-called enlightenment. That's why when we look and we watch these old movies about these old places or whatever, there's no bathrooms. Where's the bathrooms at? How are you have fountains, aqueducts, gold leaf? They were so intricate that they used walnuts and eggshells to create. They used walnuts and eggshells to create plaster that's still out there today. Like, they was wilding. We was bugging because we all were ruling in the name, right, of this power, right? That manifested in the form of love. What does he say? What was Yeshua say? He says that he is love, right? What does the word love mean? Or more, right? When we look at the Moors and how they dress, right? I'm gonna get a picture in a minute, but look at how he dressed, right? Okay. Matter of fact, before I show that, let me show these. Um, um, 1 second. Okay. Boom. Came to Georgia, the county of Tartarians. 1 second. Yes. This is it. So the type of Christian that Gengis was, he basically was the warrior type Christians. These are the so their Jesus, their version of Yeshua was not the one that was spearheaded by the Roman Catholic Church. They wanted the version of Jesus that perpetually dealt in the suffering stage. They were dealing with the aspect of Yeshua that was coming as the conquering king to kill and get rid of all of the wicked, because they believed that this was the universal master. Again, when you read the Circle Seven, he went to Egypt, Africa, Greece, right? All these different places, right? All between 13 and 33. So 1333, right? As a year, when we go 333, that's basically when the council and stuff went down, right? Between 322 and 333, right? Which 333 is an angelic number, showing that all of the eels, Mike L, Raphael, Uriel, right? These are all of the Moorish figures, or the Moorish, what they say, um, faithful, who were bringing this understanding and moving this forward in the world, which is why they made so much change in such a little span of time. So these Tartarians, right, when we're speaking of them, we're speaking of this unilateral contingent of peoples who themselves may have been in what we would today perceive as like a super state, a body, a luminescent body almost. Where, like I said, how come there was no bathrooms in the House of Versailles? It only started stinking and all of that towards the very end of the time that the interlopers came and take it out. But prior to that, it wasn't stinking. So how was they going to the bathroom? How come you don't see no toilets, no nothing in any of these castles? But these castles been there for millions or thousands of years, thousands upon thousands of years. What was they doing? So if the millennial aspect of this Moorish reign lasted within the period that they also refer to as the Dark Ages, that means that this aspect of Christ, or whatever you want to call it, was reigning. We don't know how long this stuff went down. What we do know is that at the end of the reign, At the end of the fall of the Moors, what happened to them? They all got thrown into slavery. They all got basically put into camps. Other people came and adopted their identities, right? This is what happened, right? I'm not bugging. Like, this is what happened. And then all of these other things. So now all their national names had to become their free national names. So you would be an Algonquin, because remember, a Al, that's tying you all the way back now to the ancient Kush and Hindu and all of that, right? So the Algonquin, right, or the Algonquin, right, or the Ali Bamu, right? These are all Moorish names, right? Just like Anasazi. So what happens is the Moorish side of that gets taken out, meaning the eel or the bay gets taken off of the name, right? And now we just go by what the last name is. So it was Smith L, it's now just Smith. So it used to be Odell of the Tarshagagi or the Pawnee Smiths of the Moorish clan of Eel. Now the Moorish clan of Eel is taken away or made secret in the clan, and now they just go with Smith as the name. And then what happens? The European, because the European has now taken that name, right? In his little fake system, he now gets a white man who now comes from another place and then gives him that name. And then kicks the real Cherokee Chartology Smith off the land, and then moves the white Circassian slave Smith into the land, and then gives him the land for sale. And part of the sale is he gets to take the house as it is, meaning he's walking in, the grits are still simmering on the counter, the pictures are still in the frame, the headdresses and shit is still on the mantle. So what do? They go, cameras is new now, this is 1839, right? So now they go and put on the same costumes, right? Then they take pictures, right? And now 20, 30, 50 years later, look, my father's Cherokee. How is your father Cherokee, Mr. Weintraub? You know what I'm saying? Like how is your father? How are you any of this? You were this because you claimed it, or it was given to you, right? So when we say, "Oh, well, how did it happen? How we?" I'm telling you, it's mad simple. It's the shit they was doing up until this nigga got in there last week. This is what they was doing today. They was doing the same shit today because it's the same people doing it. This is from Anthony the Armenian. So it says the emperors of Asia, or by the Tartarians, be subdued, and the kingdoms of Georgia is a marvelous, strange wonder, a miracle which I durst report believed if I had not seen it with my own eyes, because I have personally been there and been made the eye the witness thereof. The province of Courtney is called Handsome, and being in the circuit of about 3 days' journey, which is the whole extent, blah blah blah. Let me go further, Anna. That wasn't what I thought it was. Hold on. So the Tartarians were backing Gengis, who was the king of the world, right? At the time, because he had adopted Christianity, but he allowed all the other religions to exist in the court. But he functioned under a Khanate system. The Khans, who were the perpetual kings of the ancient Moors, who could descend themselves from the various tribes, who were both connected to the 12 tribes, aka the covenant with their otherworldly entity, and those who were not a part of that, who had their own relationships or lack thereof outside of that, but still had their own dominions to exist. And those two bodies in history have been put together under the generic term the ancients and the moderns. So when you read David McRitchie's book about the ancients and the moderns, he's talking about these two aspects. So we talk about the Pictish, the Britons, the Danes, the Albigensians, these terms, when you hear these white people use these terms, those are all melanated European, Western Asian old nobility that could trace their lineage all the way back to the first Grimaldis, which was the oldest so-called blue-eyed, dark-skinned group of people to exist in that part of that world. And they themselves, right, all descended, again, came into that area after the war in ancient Egypt with the people they call the Sea Kings. These are the Sea Kings. These are them. And they wreaked havoc, and Ramses, under his reign, was able to push them back. And then after he routed them out, they went out of the Mediterranean, up into what we call Europa, Western Asia, into the so-called British Isles, and then they started their wars and stuff there, and started killing all of the giants that was there. The last two giants was Albion and I forget the other one name. And they fought they killed the other one, and they fought Albion till his foot got messed up. And then what they did was they didn't want to kill him, so they let him heal. And once he was actually healed, they let him fight for his life again. He died. They threw him over the thing, and then they named the isle after him to show that they had conquered him. Albion. That's why Britain was called Albion at a certain time. Brit come from Beret. Beret is a Hebrew word which basically means like contract. So the Beret-ish or the Berit-ish or the Beretain-ish, right, are the people of the contract. Contract is the deal that they made with Yahweh or whoever when they was, leaving Egypt. That's why the Canaanites in the Circle 7 had to ask for permission from who? The pharaohs of Egypt, where these Hebrew niggas came from, to go into the other parts of the world and set up their dominions. And so that happened up until a point where we took over everything. And then what happened was your boy Gengis and them decided that they was going to take it all back on behalf of the Nestorian, what they call the Nestorian Christians, meaning the Christ that fights, the warring Christ, the Christ that came to crush all of Rome, and which did. That's why they said that Rome also fell to the Mongols, right? And how Genghis married the daughter of the Roman pontifex or some shit. Yeah, this is what happened. So there was a holy kingdom of these Moors that was ruling throughout the world in what they call the European fashion, that all came together once Charles V married, whether I don't know by force or by whatever, married the daughter of of the last king of the Inca. And then that led to them having a baby. And then they moved that baby, or their family moved to another part of the empire, right? That they call Hispaniola. And then eventually that baby allegedly grows up to be Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who is in the middle, which then linked the old world and the new one. The old Holy Roman Empire, which was the culmination of all of the stuff I said earlier, right? And the new so-called world in the old so-called Mayan or Aztec Empire, which then unified and brought everything together by way of Peru, because all that happened in Peru. Peru is the original Jerusalem. That's what made it so monumental. So when they say Peru, remember the J and the H is simultaneous, right? So when you say Jerusalem, it's also Jerusalem. Just like Jesus is Jesus, right? So the so-called Spanish Empire was then ushered in as a replacement now of the old empire, of the old Roman Empire. That was now a mixture now, see, of Moors, right? And of so-called Christians and everybody now, right? But now it's being administered and being almost overseen in certain pockets by the so-called black nobility that have grouped together under a different designation called the Societas Draconis. And so they start doing experiments and shit on these people to then give them more ways to go. So I think so in Revelation, in the book of John, like I said, the first thing it says is that John wrote those letters that made up the book to who? Where did he send the letters to? John the Divine. Anybody? Rome. Okay, that's interesting. Now, what's interesting in that is that which Rome are you speaking of? When Abraham Lincoln was writing the letters about what was happening in Rome and how Rome was trying to take everything over, he was talking about Washington, D.C. Rome, because that's the name of Washington, D.C. prior to it being sold to the federal government. You can look it up. And it was sold by a dude named Francis Pope. Isn't that funny? That a guy named Francis Pope would sell Rome to the United States, and now the person who is Pope of Rome is a dude named Pope Francis. Did y'all don't think there's something wild with that? Anybody noticing this? This is what I'm talking about, a quantum entanglement. This is why I'm showing it to you in real time. This is how it's working. Because remember, the millennial reign of the Moors on earth, all the way up to the stronghold of Granada, came at the point where everything had collapsed. And once it collapsed, what did they do? They subtracted 10 years, which was basically 1,000 years for every year, right? And shut it down. And then flipped the calendar between 1581, between February, I believe, 14th, 1581, and they made the next year or the next day October. Excuse me, of 15 something, and they made it. I'm gonna find it real quick. I'm talking all this shit. Yeah, they was wilding. Yeah, so they altered the timeline. Here it is. So not all of the Christians was with this. They wasn't with it. Especially the Khan, he wasn't with it. Because technically he was the emperor of the whole thing through what they called the Grand Tartarian Empire. And then he had different subjects under him. So you had the Black Tartars, you had the Pugachev, you had the New Muscovy, you had Muscovy, you had and all of these are descended from the ancient Scythians. These ancient Scythians in history are referred to as the Parthians, right? The Parthians are the people who took over Babylon, which in which was also Egypt. Because remember, Leonardo da Vinci, I did a class and I showed you he was in correspondence with a dude who was serving the Sultan of Babylon. And so this is when these niggas started to create the Mamelukes and the Janissaries and these white Islamic type of shock troops that they was now going to use. And then they used the Freemasonry, right, to lock them all in. So all the officers and these niggas was really into it because they were the ones who was serving these niggas directly. That's why when you look at pictures of Amshel Rothschild, he looked like a light-skinned black nigga. He looked like the dude that played Thufir Hawa in Doom. The old light-skinned black man who played the human computer in that movie. He looked just like that dude in real life. Right? So look. See? While we are inserting great amount of time, the effort, and money continuing to erase the abomination of days past from our collective history. That was us ruling everything over them in the name, right, of the one that they refer to as Yeshua. In the personage, right, of the people itself. That's why the Moors, I'm going to show you what that I mean in a minute. So look what it say. Your brotherhood is to be commended for the valiant sacrifice in our time of need, for your ingenuity in devising an appropriate solution to the resulting problems. The problem is we need to create an alternate timeline to break away from the quantum entanglement of the millennial reign that's already happened, in which these melanated people were basically gods on earth again and was basically running everything. In closing, we have agreed to implement your new calendar and accept the related daily difficulties, the effects that these changes will produce. That's the killing of everybody who remember the original timeline that they were getting rid of. So, effective immediately in the year 1582 AD, the last day of the Julian calendar was Thursday, October 4th, right? The date and the first day of the Gregorian calendar was when? Friday, right? Which is when? Sabbath. That's Shabbat, right? So they do it on Shabbat, right? Which then makes them the new God that is now stepping in, right? This is the vicar of Christ thing. This is when he step in and say, okay, I'm Christ, I'm God now. We're going to do this on Friday. And now because I was coronated on a Friday as the God day, I'm a rest and I'm going to give y'all the day of rest now, the new day of rest, which is Sunday, which is technically Monday for the Hebrews. You see how they flip it? That is a quantum entanglement that don't need to exist. October 4th on Friday in the calendar was Friday when? October 14th. What was used to be on October 14th? What used to be on October 14th, y'all? Y'all remember? Nope. Columbus Day. Thank you, Dan. Yes, Dan. Yes. Cologne Day. Yes. You see? You see how they lock you into it? You see how they lock the Moors into this bullshit? It's a time loop. You keep going back to the same bullshit. We're not creating this. This was created before we got here. So when John wrote the letters to the seven churches, right? Who was he writing to? What seven? Where was the seven churches at? Anybody ever ask you? This is how I know we don't be reading shit. This was right in our face the whole time. As many years as I done read the Bible, it's right in our face. Where was the Christian churches that this nigga John allegedly was writing to? Where were they at? Europe, right? Europe, Greece, right? No. What does it say right here? John writeth his revelation to the seven churches of Asia, signified by the seven golden candlesticks. Seven, the coming of Christ, his glorious power and majesty. These niggas seen Gengis as the Christ. And he came through and shut everything down. That's who the revelation is talking about. John is warning these niggas that the time is coming where the heavens and the earth is going to meet and the righteous is going to come and set up the new Jerusalem. Right? That's why they got them looking at the Jerusalem over there, because the original Jerusalem, again, is over here in Peru. So they got us thinking Genghis is some Mongol animal that's cutting people up and all of that, and he is doing that. But he's doing that in the name of Christ. Do you see what I'm telling you? You see the problem? You see the issue? They've been telling us the stories in reverse. It don't make sense. It didn't happen like that because they flipped the timeline. They took the 10 days, applied 1,000 year to each day, subtracted that from the calendar, added it to their calendar. So subtract 1,000 plus years from us, right? And then flip it. So we don't know that the time is at hand. But in the end, nobody really know when it's going to be. So I first posted this years ago. Same video. Same point. See you don't even have to read Roman numerals to see that they changed the date on the same building. Why would they do that? Because the so-called black nobility, who were the ones that I showed you, connected to the papal families, which were the old black Roman families, they all united and they were part of what they call the Drakensberg Society. And from the Drakenberg Society, they were able to create a culture where they could ritually sacrifice and do all the black magic shit or whatever and write it off as rites of their religion. And so they used the Order of the Dragon to do this. The Order of the Green Dragon, that was a part of Dracul. And then they started to do the blood ritual sacrifices and stuff that you see wounding happening, or that they attribute to the Aztecs. They want you to believe that the Aztecs was doing that before they got there. No, this was instituted on them after. So you hate the Aztecs and you feel that they're savages for what they're doing to one another. So the way that you deal with it is by being savage and doing the same shit that they was doing. Does that make sense? Does that really make sense to anybody? I thought they were supposed to be the good guy. I thought y'all supposed to be the great civilizers, coming here to show the savage niggas how they supposed to be living. They supposed to be cutting their heads off and shit too. But that's what they did. But where did these Spaniards come from? Where did these Romans come from? They came from shit like this. See what I'm saying? Which is exactly what these niggas is doing today. And the females. The females is doing it too. Half of them don't even like white people. Because and them people ain't white. They not white. They can't be. Because that's not their status. This picture right here on your left. How many people seen a movie about Facebook? I seen that movie about Facebook, right? Back in the days. Okay. It's called The Social Network. When you go and look at that movie, there's a huge part of it that takes place in a place in Harvard called the Porcelain Club. The Porcelain Club is the most strictest white male aristocratical club that you could be into. You got to be the crustiest of the crustiest crust white people to be in this club, okay? So in that club, like if you're not a member of the club, you can come in, but you can only come to where you see the bike. The bike that's been there has been there from the beginning of the club, which is in the late 1800s, and it's been in the same place. Okay, so when you come in this club, one of the first things you're going to see is this. You're going to look at this on the right, left hand side of your screen. You're going to see this portrait of this dude. And you ask yourself, who the hell is this dude? And what is he doing in as soon as you walk in, this is what you see. Okay. And what's interesting, hold on, about that picture is he is a part of, again, the porcelain history of the actual place. He was the very first butler. But they said in the mystery or the history of it that nobody remembers hiring him, that he just happened to always be there. Almost like it was his house from the beginning. This is what they say about this thing. So again, this is what I'm saying, how they be telling you exactly what they be doing and who's with it. You know what I'm saying? And who was really backing them up. It's somebody that looked like you and me. Always. So there's two types of Ottomans. There was the white fake Moor Ottomans, right? The Mamelukes, because remember I told you the Mamelukes, the Janissaries, the White Knights Templars, the KKK, the taken over Knights of Pythias, the Odd Fellows. These were all of the groups that were tapped by the new legitimacy, the puppets of the new legitimacy, that they were going to be the ones, and that they were going to be the ones to take over. And so everybody had to do what they needed to do to sustain them. Okay. So it says in the Bible that the original people, when they got kicked out, they wound up having to go to Arzareth. Okay. Remember that word, Arzareth. Oh, my bad. Okay. They went to Arzareth. That is where the 12 tribes allegedly went to. All right. And they said that Arzareth was in the extreme west of Tartary, right? The supreme west is septentrional, right? So there you see it. This right here is America. This portion, all of this right here, all of this is old America. I would say more this part before the dispensation. Then all of this gets filled out and then goes up that way and comes down. Then all of this comes back together. This is the Gulf right in here, and this is where it goes up the line, right? When it was all together. Then when you look at it closer, that when you look at it closer, you see the 10 tribes they exist here in Tartarium and Tartarium local, meaning descendant of the Scythian subfamily. Then Grant, I can't read the rest, the Gloria, blah, 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 in Cathay Claris Regnum. So Cathay meaning the place, and in Regnum meaning that they're the kings. So this is where they all went. Remember in Lord of the Rings, they had to go, who was the king in the story? It was Argon, right? Aragon, right? Right. So here's Aragon. Here's Argon or Aragon, right? Because it all happened in Middle Earth. What does Middle Earth represent? That's when the king returned, right? That's when all of the nations got together and fought the devils, right? That was popping out of the earth, right? And they needed the small people, right, to help them do it. And then everybody got together and shut the whole shit down. Where did the demons came? The demons came from the sea, right? They was on the boats, right? And the smoke that the demons was coming off of the boats with was what? Was green like a snake, right? And they came up and they was going to kill Aragon until he held the sword up, which is what? The cross, right? The cross. He then held the sword up, held the crown up, and then what they do? They all bowed to the sword and they went in and they all killed the bad guys, right? Who was coming in on what? On the elephants, and they had on the turbans and all of that, right? They had on the bad guys. They were the ones that was dressed up like the Moors in it, right? Yeah, because that's what it was. It was dirty Moors fighting clean Moors. And then you had Moors who wasn't involved at all, but they was like, fuck it, we're not going to let it go down like this. Then there were Moors that wanted revenge from the pre-flood time because they still got the old DNA in it, right? Not everybody's with this shit. And so they wound up shutting it all down. And then that's what they did. And then they established the kingdom. And then what do they say about the Moors? What do they say about the Moors of Granada? They said that what? Read the story, Stanley Lane Poole. What did he say? He said that the Moors lived in such revelry that it would be barely known that there was no poverty. That they had such sciences that everybody in the world was coming there, that they changed the diet of humanity. How do you do that? How do you circumnavigate the entire world where you got buildings all over the world that look like they was built by the same people? How you do that? And remember, these Moors, only 5% of them was Christian. So that means that when these is so-called Islamic Moors, let's just call them Islamic for lack of a better word. Let's say these Islamic Moors take over, they still have a group of Christians that are making the majority of the army. How do you explain that? Because they weren't dealing with Christianity. They weren't dealing with the post-fall Christianity that started once the papal church and the papacy rewrote the timeline and put everybody in a fiction. Then the Cess Do We Trust was set up. Then all of these different things started happening, and then that was it. So when you see these old illuminated manuscripts and you see these halos around these people's heads, they tell us, oh, that's because those people, they were like really special. And they were really they were like exalted above everybody else. That's because these are the people who were ruling in the direct name, excuse me, of the one that ushered in the destruction of everything. Because everything was destroyed. Mount Vesuvius destroyed it. They said, Josephus and them said that the moon was basically blotted out, that nobody could see nothing for months. But the light of the world was the only thing that could be seen. So what I think is that Revelation was actually the story of the destruction of Tartary and the destruction of the old world. And we are the people born after that. Because the times of Tartary, Tartaria, or Barbaria overlap to the point that they exist simultaneously. So when the Moors went up into Spain and then was fighting the Woodwos, remember said the Moors was fighting the Woodwos, which were the wild men, the wild hairy men. These were these people. They was taking them. They was killing them. But these people, them things also had culture. They also had their own kings and their own languages and their own thing. That was the thing. So I think part of the deal in them being allowed to come into human civilization was that they had to get rid of the things that made them not human, bestial human, and then created a breeding program to breed them in. So when they talk about Prester John, that's Genghis Khan. And that the Khanate and the Caliphate and the Imamate and those cultures that were coming in were all adopting and trying to refulfill and create a utopian type society. On your screen, that's a picture of Dionysus, the black dude. All his early depictions of him, and all of them was black. Zeus's name used to be Ethops. Therefore, Ethiopia was named after him. Isn't that crazy? But Ethiopia is a Christian country, ain't it? Yes, because Victor is the king of Italy, right? When have you ever seen a white man be referred to as the emperor of Ethiopia? Never. But one of the chief religions in Ethiopia is the Greek Orthodox, right? Right? Right. And that's where Sheba came from, right? She came from the Nabatean, Sabbatean nations, right? And the Sabbatean nations, on behalf of the Ethiopian traders, went up into Italy in post in intermediate Etruscan times, set up a college, and those first Sabaean women link up with those so-called Roman men, and they create the first Romans. But they're taught by the Ethiopians, who brought these Sabaean slave women up there for them to be with, and then created one of the first colleges from there. And then that's when we get these so-called Roman philosophers coming from them. But Virgil, one of the greatest Roman philosophers, that's a melanated person. Arius, one of the Moors who fought against the Catholics in their version of how they seen so-called Yeshua or Jesus, how they didn't believe in the Trinity like that. There was a lot of Christians that didn't believe in none of that, the way that the Catholics did it. And eventually they brought that through and shut all of them down and killed all of the other versions. That's why no other version existed until Martin Luther really came and nailed his thesis or whatever to the door of the archdiocese, right? And then what happened? But guess what? Martin Luther was a Rosicrucian. That's why the symbol of the Lutheran Church is a heart with a cross in it on fire, which was a symbol of who? The Nestorian Christians, which was symbolic by the rose. Because Sir Francis Bacon, the person who brought Rosicrucianism into West Asia, aka Europa, studied at the Marabut Moorish order of the rose, the Sufic order of the rose, and then brought it up there. And that's when they gave it to the rest of those niggas. And then that's when all of that stuff started. Then eventually all of that got back to the Khan. And then that's when he decided, okay, well, we're going to start the Crusades and we're going to kick these dirty Moors and the rest of these niggas out. And they did. And then every son that he had up until a last son of Braga, he was the one that went back to paganism. And then that's when the empire eventually started to break up. And then that's when the Rus, the red ones, those dark-skinned Scythian Moors, came over, took over New Muscovy. The Rus took over New Muscovy, and then they took over Tartary by 1812, which happened to be the same year as the New Madrid earthquake, which led to the intermediary reset. Because after that, I believe you had the Carrington event. And that's when everything started getting melted and burnt up. And then between, let's say, 1812, 1865, then from 1865 to about 1899, everything is basically done. Then by 1900, they start trying to move people back into the abandoned places that have been all washed up. They start digging them out. Where all the people at? How come the building look like it's dirty all the way to the top? What happened? So then that's when they start, like I said, mass producing people to produce things in mass, right? And then we, the remnants of all of that, right? A lot of them we remember how glorious and all that shit it was, right? But now we're born of the first generation, right, of POWs born after this, right? So by 1900, from that point on, we only know the history that we taught in the Moors Indian charity schools, which are the giant institutions, right? Those of us that's lucky to go to those type of schools. The other ones, right, we got to go to the community schools in our area. And in some of them areas, we've been all bombed out and impoverished. So we don't even have no shoes. We got to walk miles, right? So they just make sure that every teacher that's in there is either a Christian preacher who's also a Freemason. And so then we are brought into the story as it is from that point on. And we don't forgot. And anybody that remembers seen as crazy. But that's why our great grandmothers and them used to always be singing and humming and all of that about Jesus. Because part of them remember. They remember the rain. They was in it. But it became like a dream. Woke up in this reality and now they slaves. They niggas. They sharecroppers. They chain gangers. They pimps. They prostitutes. They Indians. They Negroes. They blacks. They African Americans. But everybody else in the world got their nationality, even the people that was colonized. How that work? See, the Romans subdued all the western parts of Asia, and afterwards the successors of Muhammad, generally known by the name of the Saracens, founded in Asia, in Africa, and in Europe, and more extensively the empire that of Cyrus and Alexander, even of that of Rome, went to the greatest height. The Saracen greatness declined on the death of Tamerlane. See, another Moor. And the Turks soon after took possession of the middle southwestern regions of Asia they still occupy. Right? These Turks that they're talking about, though, they talking about the white Mameluke Janissary Turks. They not talking about the Otto Manguan Ottomans that was here in America, that was running the military and all of that over here. The OTO-MANGUANs. Big up to brother Shikamaga. He showed and proved how they was all up and down the continents and shit, patrolling as our army. So yeah, so this happened. They shut everything down. Gengis and all of that. That's why the side of the world was cut off. This was the paradise. Nobody could come here unless they had permission through him. And to get to him, you had to be in good standing. Because if not, your head would be taken. Because he is now representing the conqueror who came on the white horse. What color do you always see the horse that Genghis was on? White. What color did the Mongols and the Tartars and the black Tartars and the Moors were? White. White. Fine cottons and linen. Where was Genghis getting cotton and linen from in Asia? When they was allegedly a horse culture that never got off their horses. You see the bullshit? So like I said, once he got shut down, once Tamerlane fell, all of the Moors fell, and then they was able to take back over the portion that they had lost. And thus the Holy Lands was opened back up. And that's how the invasion and all that shit started over here in the 13th century that we read about in the book that I showed. This is a picture of so-called American Indians by an old American Indian sculptor named James Jules, who did it from seeing people in life in America. Notice anything interesting? These American Indians over here look like Moors, just like these ones do. This one dressed in, let's say, old Phoenician type, an old American or Tonkin type. You notice he's standing next to a obelisk. She's an ancient so-called Phoenician, whatever type clothes in the middle, and then she and then they in traditional Moorish garb. All American. Because again, an American sculptor did this, allegedly of American people that he would see in his travels. Islam. Exactly. Anybody got any questions? Next week I'll get more into the biblical stuff for those people who are into the Bible. But when you read about the campaigns of Genghis outside of the propaganda stuff, and you read really about how the trade routes and stuff was established and how long they existed, and then you add that to now the time frame of the Moors or the Moorish Empire in terms of the real time, not the time they're telling us it is, then we could see that a lot of this technology and stuff was already here. And the discovery of it or the patenting of it was just them taking it out of the shelf or finding it, figuring out how it worked, and then putting their name on it. Because remember, they're Freemasons. So all they did was go into the masonry and took it for free. You know what I'm saying? And then they found it. So that meant that they founded it. So then they wrote founded on the term after they broke open the cornerstone of the old buildings and took the time capsules out. A good place to begin is start with the Circle 7 Quran, Golden Age of the Moor. Um, these are old Tesla power lines that existed. And as you can see, they want you to believe that people with buggies made the shit. People with horses and buggies was making shit like this. Yeah, they supposed to hand you silver. The master masons, if they know that you are more and you living in the property, they're supposed to hand the silver over immediately. Whatever they got, they're supposed to run their pockets because of the old agreement, you know. Because we're the ones that brought them out of the darkness. They didn't exist in reality until we brought them fully in here by uh, genetically altering their females. Once their females was genetically altered, then it was pretty much a wrap. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's what happened. That's why Haiti is always attacked, because Haiti basically became the seat of the new empire. And that's why a lot of the music and the different portions of the empire, again, were given based upon all of the stuff that they had learned from Ziryab after the, you know, the Golden Age. For all music, that's how Beethoven was able to take it to the next level, where once everybody goes and listens to a Beethoven song, everybody's data line goes to zero. So that means whatever mind control is going on, all you got to do is listen to that shit, and you automatically automatically breaks any psychological hold on you. You know, like, this is facts. So it's the same way we deal with music all the time. That's why they use music against us through these devils, through these demons that we see as artists. See, it's all the same thing because we're in the same time loop, guys. That's what's going on. So the more we understand it, the more we get out of it, the more we're up out of here. You know what I'm saying? Anybody else have any questions? Hold up. Give me 1 second. The quickening of the reality is the reality reaching the point where it has to expand beyond its basic parameters because everybody's awake now. So everybody got to get to a point where you can't sustain a fiction because the reality is too apparent. So those that want the fiction are going to move into their quickening is going to take them into a further fiction. Ours is going to take us into a better reality. That's why some people saw the fires going on and a lot of people didn't, you know? Anybody else? Come on, man. Maybe that's this. Yeah, the Circle 7, the, what you call it, Golden Age of the Moor. Definitely get that. Nature Knows No Color Line. These are the basic joints I would say anybody should get to start. Nature Knows No Color Line. Um, Golden Age of the Moor, Circle 7 Quran. You know, um, yeah. Start with those. African Presence in Early America. You can get that. Time Walker by Meredith Quinn. Definitely get that. Consecrated Talismans by Prince Uriel Bey. Definitely get that. Come on, man. Fucking great. Trying to think of any other one. I think that's good. Um, yes, books by Uriel Bay. Any book that you can get your hands on by him is definitely a must-have. Unfortunately, sometimes they're hard to get like that. I have some um, of the Latin joints on file, so people can hit me up at houseofbell@hotmail.com to build with you on what we could do with that. Lastly, on your screen, on the left-hand side is the imperial flag of Haiti. You know what I mean? So you have the black and red one. People always talk about. I was trying to find the actual place where you could find it for yourself. But, people be like, "Oh, Haiti don't have no imperial flag." Well, that's because they don't see Haiti as ever being an empire. But how else could you explain Haiti helping all of the South American countries get their freedom? And why do all the South American countries at the top of their crests have a damn fez at the top of it, or what they call the Liberty Cap, which can also be referred to as a, a Phrygian cap, which was Parthian again, bringing us all the way back again to the time loop. You know, next week I'll find the joint that I wrote that actually has this in it. And post that because I was trying to find it in this other thing. Anybody else have any questions? And then those are some American soldiers from the so-called Civil War, or at least a lithographic picture of them. So, you know, we here, man, and we figuring it out one day at a time. Which is all we can really do. So again, anybody have any other questions? Just definitely hit me up. If you haven't already checked out, you can check out Apple Books. If you haven't gotten a hard copy, I have the digital copies up there now. You definitely check that. Also, you can check out, excuse me, www.aseertheducateers.com. If you haven't already, I have my links to my other stuff there. Definitely check that out. Also, check out CordobaOrganics.com. Selena's always fulfilling orders. That's what she's doing right now, I think. So I definitely want to give her a shout out. I couldn't do it without her. Also, check out, again, this is the hard copy of what the cover looks like for the Darsco 418. And trying to think if there's anything else. Anybody have any last questions? Yes, definitely. Rest in peace, Elder Neely Fuller. Definitely honest to him, and honest to Dr. Francis Quest Wilson. Bless the dead. It's gonna come soon, man. I'm actually finishing up now. I can show you guys a quick picture of it, of one of the pages. It's coming out really well. Honest to the artist, the colorist. He's really going in, trying to show a good image. Here's one. Here's a preview of one. So that's looking good. And here's another one real quick. So yeah, I'm trying to get all of this popping and try to activate the youth the way that we was activated back in the days, because this is why these companies and these peoples is paying millions of dollars to put homosexuality in the cartoons and things like that, is because of the power that it has over the imagination, and thus given a proper context and then put in a circumstance where people can see aspects of themselves, not only in a positive way, but in a way that they may ancestrally remember. You see what I'm saying? It creates another dynamic or power dynamic that doesn't really lend itself to any other medium. So now that they're being weeded out of entertainment, they don't have we are now the alternative. Traditional media is dead now. So now it's about the cartoons and stuff that we come out with, TV shows, books, clothes, shoes, whatever we come out with, because now there's not anybody siphoning the money that's holding up your hustle and holding up your payout. You're the one with the bread. You're the one with the content. You don't need anybody to do anything now other than yourself. So why not literally do it yourself? You know what I'm saying? So this is just one way I'm striving to do it in a manner outside of how, I'm supposed to do it. Because this is doing stuff like this is how I got into knowledge, because your imagination is what really allows you to bridge your logic with the probability matrix that exists in your pineal organ. So your imagination, if you can see yourself doing it, you've actually already done it. You just now got to catch up to the point in reality in which you exist in it. You know what I'm saying? So I urge everybody should write a book. Everybody should do an album. Everybody should, you know what I'm saying? At least once. So yeah, man, we back on top. It's only a matter of time. So yeah, anybody want to hit me up at houseofl@hotmail.com. Thank you guys for the $30 to ts418.com via Cash App or duketeers@gmail.com. I appreciate it. It helps me do all of this. Thank you for everybody keeping your joints muted as well. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I was doing it on Amazon too, and then I just shut them out. And now I'm just doing it all self. I'm trying to put it through my own portals until I can get it big enough where if I mess with them, it's more on a partnership basis and not me paying them to do something. So, inshallah, we'll get there. Long live the empire, guys. If you have any other questions, hit me up, houseofl@hotmail.com. Peace. Thank you, man. I'm glad you really like the app. Thanks to everybody that's subscribed to it. I got some new stuff coming onto it this week as well. All right. Peace.